Hey everyone, welcome to our Spark Sessions webinar. We are going to go ahead and get started because this is a 30-minute webinar, so we want to make sure we have time to cover everything. So with that, I am excited to announce that we have our new Spark Sessions. This is our first one that we're putting on, and the goal for these is to put them on about every other month. So we'll be doing a TikTok webinar in April. And then the goal is, if you have any topics in mind or anything like that, we really want to elicit feedback from our audience overall. So feel free to throw in the chat any kind of topics that you're interested in learning more about. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. All right, so this is kind of the obligatory housekeeping slides that we always do, but I just wanted to mention all participants except the panelists are muted. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box and we'll address them at the end. And lastly, we will send out an email with the recording after, or not, sorry, not after, but tomorrow afternoon. So look out for that in your inbox if you want to rewatch it or share it with any colleagues. All right, with that, I'm so thrilled to introduce today's speaker, Kevin Lord-Berry, the co-founder of Right%. Hey, Kevin, want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Very excited to go through this deck with you today.
Awesome. Well, if you're not familiar with Right%, they are a right side up venture that focuses on scaling fast-growing B2B companies across every vertical through SEM and paid social advertising. Right% has managed over 100 million in ROI positive B2B ad spend for companies like DoorDash, Ramp, Reddit, and many more. Great. All right, it is poll time, everyone. So let me launch a quick poll. Great. So do you feel like marketing and sales work well? I'll be curious, Kevin, which one do you think will get the bigger response?
I think I would have guessed no, but it looks like we have more yeses right now. A little close to even. Oh, it's evening up.
All right, we got one, I'm not sure. Yeah, interesting enough, it does look like it's yes or no, it's split even. If anyone else wants to chime in before we close it, let us know. Ooh, got one more.
Proving me right. Thank you, anonymous person.
That was the goal, right? Cool. All right. I can quickly share the results so everyone can see. So it looks like no, but by a very low margin. So seems like, we're hit or miss on whether people really feel like marketing sales work well. But I'm sure, Kevin, you'll have your opinions as you go through this deck.
That I will, and I'll jump right in.
Awesome.
Yeah. So hi everybody. Welcome to this deck on how to accelerate the sales cycle with B2B advertising. There's a bunch of parts of accelerating the sales cycle, but in generally, the big hypothesis of this is that some people say that marketing's job is not to close deals, right? It's to bring leads to sales to close deals. No, I reject that utterly and completely. As marketers, we have many tools in our toolkit to increase the chances of leads closing down funnel. And this deck is about those tools, those levers that we have. Fundamentally, the four levers of increasing the value of leads to sales are: one, first aligning with sales on lead value; two, making ads that maximize that lead value; three, promoting content that maximizes that lead value; and four is assisting pre-existing sales relationships with potential customers. And we're going to go into all four of these levers throughout the next 26 minutes. So the first one, aligning with sales on lead value. So lead value is an estimate of the revenue that'll be generated from a lead in the future. So if you have two leads, lead A and B, and one says their name is Cletus and they spend $1 a year on business expenses and have no employees, and lead B is, Magnus Chatterson, and he's spending $1,000 million a month on whatever your product is. Like, obviously, one lead is better than the other, right? What affects the value of a lead? Level of qualification, so employees, revenue, budget; intent, how urgent is the customer's need for your product; and authority, like, is the person who filled out the lead form the decision maker, or is it somebody who's almost uninvolved? All of these affect the value. And note that you don't need a formal score for each lead. Scores are nice, but just discussing this with the sales team is enough. There are three ways to determine these lead values above, right? One is what they fill out in the lead form. Two is how they interact with your website and product. So interaction could be, if you're Trello, someone signs up and creates their first Trello board. Or if you're Craigslist, someone comes in and like does their first post. These are all ways that people can interact with your product, which can be tracked. And then the other way is qualitative feedback from sales. In general, lead value is so important in B2B because you can't wait for B2B sales to close before making decisions on campaigns. You need value information to determine of all your campaigns, which ones are generating the highest quality leads. And generally, you want it fast within 24 hours. So you can't wait to see, like, oh, out of 100 leads in campaign A, 10 became customers. That takes too long, unlike in e commerce. So this is why we need signals of future lead value. I like to say that B2B marketers need to create life. Or if I'm in a bad mood, they need to get a life. Um, Life means leading indicators of future earnings. So this is, part of what we've talked about in the last two slides. Every single thing that a lead tells you when they come in the door gives you some kind of indicator as to what value that lead will have in the future. And your job is to figure out what those leading indicators are, whether it's number of employees, target industry, or you ask in the form and they say they want to move forward within 30 days. All of those things are leading indicators. Um, Aligning with sales on the value of leading indicators and leads helps lead quality in two ways. One, it simplifies real life discussions of campaign performance. So it gives a shared number that marketing and sales can talk about with confidence. Because a lot of times at orgs, marketing is like, hey, we drove 100 leads, and sales says, well, they're all low quality and we can't close them. And it just becomes an argument. Once you align on quality with a reliable metric that everyone agrees on, those conversations go much smoother. Secondly, it powers ad algorithms to bring better leads through conversion events. So, professional advertisers know what conversion events are. A little refresher. They are anything that happens on your website that you send as a signal back to the platform and say, hey, this is good. This is what we want more of. So for instance, for OnDeck, which is a small business lender, a conversion event could be just someone filling out the lead form, or it could be somebody on the fourth step of the lead form uploading their bank documents. Conversion events are important because they train the algorithm of Facebook, Meta, Search, and LinkedIn to find more customers like yours. So this is actually a case study of, someone did the exercise, right? They found out what a highly qualified leads mean. For this type of business, it has to do with like last year's revenue and number of employees and so on. And they came up with two metrics, leads and highly qualified leads. And here's two test campaigns where we spent $100,000 going after each bucket. And you can see optimizing, and this is on Meta, but this same strategy works on Google and many other platforms. If we optimized only on leads, so without the qualification metrics, we got a nice cheap $7 cost per lead, but the cost per qualified lead, the ones that sales could close easily, was $300. We switched to optimizing only on leads that were qualified. So leads and they had at least 100,000 revenue in the last year and they had at least 5 employees, etc. Cost per lead went up because there's fewer of these, but cost per qualified lead went down dramatically just because the Meta algorithm got trained to find these better leads. And this is why, in addition to, creating, getting a life, creating leading indicators is so important, not just for the manual discussion side with sales, but also because it can actually power the algorithms to get you many more of the high quality leads that you want. What do you want from your main conversion events? It should be a leading indicator of revenue. We just talked about this. It should happen within 1 day of click. You want fast learnings. If it takes a week for sales to update the data, that doesn't work as well for ads. You want to get 30 to 50 conversions per week of the one that you want when you're optimizing on the ad platforms. So if you only get like 10 opportunities a month, that's not a good thing to optimize on, even if it's down funnel. And then you need to find the balance between event value and quantities. So, you want whatever the highest quality, deepest event is that correlates to revenue the most in the future, that you get at least 30 of a week. Um, In general, you optimize on the main conversion events on any of these sites, but you should create events for any important activity. And I can't tell you how much it hurts, especially product-led growth companies, when the product or tech or security team doesn't allow tracking in the app, like it doesn't let you see like how many people get to each stage. That really, really neuters the effectiveness of any of ad campaign that you want to run in B2B. So that's enough on conversion events. Let's talk a little bit about communicating with sales more. So what's stuff that sales needs to tell marketing? One is answering questions from the marketing team. I'll have some sample questions on that in the next slide. Two is a weekly lead review. I think for any sales-led growth organization, this is really important to have a meeting where sales, at least a couple sales directors, meet with marketing and go over, okay, this week's leads. Here's what we thought. Here's the best lead. Here's some bad leads. This really helps marketing incrementally improve the quality of their campaigns. On the other side of that, marketing needs to tell sales a few things. One, what kind of ads are running? In that same weekly meeting, you can screen share. Oh, these are the ads that are doing best this week. These are the kind of offers. People like the buy one, get one free. They like the ebook about revenue increasing and not the ebook about cost decreasing. And the channels you're running ad. Like you want them to know, oh, we're running a lot more Facebook ads next week. So just keep that in mind. These are a bunch of really good questions to ask the sales team. So I find, and we're going to send you this doc, by the way, that there's also product questions in this doc. Salespeople have the best idea for how to run ads. They talk to customers all the time. Like they know the magic language that attracts customers. So I highly recommend having like a good hour-long call with some senior salespeople and going through these questions and then like just writing up a big notes doc. Like almost always after we have this call, we can put some insights that improve the like ROI of our ads by like 15%. Um, this next part is sales dynamics about like how does the intent of the lead coming in interact with how the sales team can close those leads. So different types of leads have different levels of intent. This is measuring from best to worst, basically. A warm referral, you can close even if the sales team is incompetent, right? Because someone already wants to use your product. Outbound, where you're just calling people, is the hardest way of doing sales, right? If you can do outbound sales, then you can do any kind of intent level of sales. And one thing to note is that all leads from paid media are lower quality than most of the leads like above it in the chart. So especially when B2B companies are venturing out into ads for the first time, they can be like one common thing that happens that's bad is that the sales team is used to dealing with these warm, easy leads of inbound who have done their research and have a hard time closing leads from paid media, which, if you just saw an ad on Google or Facebook or LinkedIn, you've just heard of your product, right? Like that's why you're lower intent. And so it takes some work. We have seen that sending leads like hunter leads are what I refer to as leads where the sales team really needs to go after them to make the sale as opposed to gatherer, which is the warmer ones. Paid social leads work more like outbound, and we see that if you give those leads to an outbound team, they'll convert really well. So we've had that case study done at Right% twice with clients where they took all of the paid social and non-brand search leads and sent them to the team that was doing outbound, and they increased conversion rate by like 15 or 20% each time because they're just better at dealing with those style of low intent leads. So some companies you work with split their teams into hunter and gatherer, or there's a variety of other setups that are possible. So it's worth discussing this with sales leadership. So this is just the case study that I just mentioned, sending paid social leads to the outbound team. But there's a wide variety of things. As marketers, we don't want to tell sales what to do, but we can tell them that like, hey, these type of leads are lower intent. We're going to be making more of them. How do you guys want to deal with that on your side? A couple other things that matter with sales leadership is time to call makes a dramatic difference in conversion rate. This is especially true for ads where the user quickly forgets where they heard of you. So you open LinkedIn, you said, oh, this is interesting. You sign up, you put your lead in. 3 days later, you probably don't remember that you filled in a link form, a form on LinkedIn, but you do remember that, 30 minutes later if you get a sales call. So time to lead makes a big difference. We've seen that for many clients, and it's worth checking in on with your sales team. Okay, part three, and I know we're racing through this. We only have 30 minutes. Ads and content that accelerate sales. So, for those of you who follow me a lot, you'll know that the text on the ads, what we call the visual headline, is the biggest component of down funnel ad performance. So, like these are all successful ads. You'll see they're quite text heavy, and they do a good job of calling out the customer we want to answer it. So, fleet managers, get your evaluation guide. Salon and spa owners, the online booking platform that works. Ads can do some work to pre-qualify your audience. There's a few tricks to pre-qualifying your audience. One is to add or imply pricing. So, if your pricing is $1,000 a month and you don't want small business owners like clicking on your ad, you can mention that, or you can mention something else that indicates that pricing is high. Another thing you can do is add brand names of competitors or complements. I have a good example of this in the next slide. And you can call out features and use language that only high quality users care about. So all of these things will increase the percentage of high quality users clicking your ads and decrease the percentage of low quality users. So this is an example. This was a while ago. We ran this with Roger. Bill.com was the 900-pound gorilla in their space. And just like mentioning Bill.com and saying that you can switch to Roger instead was by far our most successful ad because it pre-qualifies people. If someone is already using Bill.com, they already know how to pay for a payment SaaS. They are already paying the rates of the industry leader, so it should work for you. For Reddit here, you can see the other example of like how this language we use is going after the kind of people with bigger marketing budgets, right? Like not small business owners, your most valuable audience. Words like medium household income. This is the language of media planners at bigger companies, which is what we're going after in this ads, not just like the local pizza shop. The same principles applies to the content you promote via ads. So sales can only sell from content that follows the three golden rules. I'll get into that in the next slides. And they need to know which content pieces their leads are coming from so they can reference them. Too often, marketing teams just send content leads to a sales team with no prep, no nothing. Sales just treats them like any other lead. You can really improve conversion rate by making sure there's a connection where sales knows like which content piece someone downloaded. And gated and ungated content are both just a really important and powerful part of marketing strategies for many clients we have. So the golden rules of content are one, and I'm just going to check what time it is. Great. Laser focus on your target audience. So instead of guide to increasing business profit, guide to increasing widget business profit for sales leaders, right? Like you want to get as specific as possible. You want your target customer to be the one who says, "Ooh, I like this content idea. Let me click that," and not waste leads from unqualified people, which something that's too broad might do. It should be closely related to your value prop. So this is what we talk about how sales needs to upsell from this content, right? So if you're Bill.com and you don't want to make a guide to work during COVID-19 because your sales team can't possibly upsell from that, right? If you have Bill.com's guide to how accounts payable is changing, that's something your sales team can upsell from. Like oh, like our platform automatically takes care of work from home employees, like whatever. There's a connection to your value prop, and this is really important to making content work. And lastly, it should be actionable. So easy for the customer to imagine how to use. Templates, checklists, handbooks are all really effective. If we look at this Zenefits ad, create an employee handbook in minutes, this ad was one of the most successful for many years before Zenefits was acquired by TriNet. And the sales conversation goes so well because someone downloads the employee handbook templates, they get a call that says, "Hey, by the way, did you know, glad you're enjoying that content. Did you know the Zenefit software does all this stuff for you? It automates all this handbook stuff." And that's just a really compelling sales call after you've built trust. If sales is having a hard time selling to leads from content anyway, one, you can add a question to your form. Do you want a demo or do you want to talk to a salesperson? Only send the yeses to sales. Generally, on average, 40% of form respondents will say yes. So you can then give sales an easier time. You can also test offering an incentive to users who attend the demo. So this sounds tacky, but some of the biggest B2B brands that you've seen do this, where they say, "Hey, if you want to, come to the demo, talk to our sales team, and get an incentive, a Nintendo Switch, Amazon gift card, a ramp card, whatever, right? Um, this works. The big reason this works is because in ads you are fighting inertia. Inertia is your number one competitor. People are lazy and don't want to do anything. If you do this, you dramatically increase the actual demo show up rate, right? Like you may get a few lower quality leads that just want the incentive, but you increase the rate of people showing up to the demo so much more that the math works out. Last section. So how do you assist the sales cycle? Sales already working with leads. How does marketing come in and assist them? Um, for enterprise and mid-market SaaS companies, marketing's job is often to assist the sales team directly. What I mean by that is like in enterprise, sales is kind of the big dog. They drive more of the revenue. Marketing like helps them. In B2 SMB or B2 consumer, like marketing is much more king. We can help the sales team, however, even in enterprise, with two tools: retargeting and coordinating on ABM campaigns. So retargeting, if you're an advertiser, this is pretty straightforward. One thing to mention is that if you're a startup, retargeting is a cheap best practice, but low volume. Like you're not going to transform your whole business with a genius remarketing or retargeting strategy. Uh, Generally, you want to have the volume to split into different stages. Like, even though there's advice online that says like, go through the 4 stages of awareness, consideration, etc., most B2B companies are better off making one big consideration campaign and just having lots of different offers in there that people can choose from for simple matters of volume. In an ABM campaign, advertising plays a small but useful role. So how does ABM start? It starts by the sales team building a list. So some smart person goes through and says, these are our top 1,000 key accounts we want to go after in 2025. Uh, Sales needs to share that list with marketing, and then marketing can do some fun things with it. One, you need a variety of offers. So lists exhaust very quickly. So if you have, 2,000 companies on your list and 10 people in each of those, that's 20,000 people total. You'll need at least 6 offers. Offers meaning ebooks, templates, incentives, ungated content, thought leadership, whatever you want to keep cycling through because you'll exhaust the audience so quickly. And tracking is totally different in ABM versus performance. So ideally, in normal direct response performance tracking, you want your internal system to be tracking prospect touches so you can slice and dice the data. So if you want to see, customers that came from LinkedIn, you can look at your internal data and say like, oh, 10 came with first touch, 7, 16 had any touch. They touched an ebook at any point. Like this is traditional attribution. In ABM, often traditional attribution is impossible because like it just doesn't support direct response ads. Generally, you want to do a lift test instead. That means you take that full list of sales contacts I mentioned earlier, split it into half into 2 even groups, serve that wide variety of ads and offers over about 6 weeks to one half, serve the other half nothing, and then measure overall sales response rate on both sides of the test. And then your measurement is like totally untracked. Did the list that got ads have a higher number of sales interactions during that time? Were they more likely to respond to emails, et cetera, et cetera? There's a lot of metrics there, but it's a fairly simple thing to run a lift test, but this is the only true way to measure the impact of a real ABM campaign completely. And one last note before Q&A is just if you're having trouble figuring out how do you run a statistical test to go through this, ChatGPT is actually really good at helping you design statistical tests. You can just talk to it in plain language.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. You're able to cover that with 6 minutes to spare. So great job with that. I know your last slide's on ABM, which could be a whole topic on itself. I know, Alex, you mentioned that in the chat, so we'll definitely consider that for the future. But yeah, now we have probably a couple minutes for questions. So I'll look in the Q&A and we'll go ahead and get started. So Michael asked, my product has elements of product-led growth and a sales team. Does that change anything?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It does change some things. Basically, you have to figure out the relationship between, where you want the product to own things versus where you want sales. So we've had a lot of clients, for instance, DoorDash had a system where PLG had 24 hours to work. Someone signs up, goes through the flow, puts their menu in, but if they don't finish the job, then sales calls them, 24 hours later and says, "Here, let me walk you through this process." Other companies take a more aggressive approach. As soon as you fill out page one, a salesperson calls and says, like, "Here, let me help you finish this and get through it." There's an article on the Right Percent site. So if you go to rightpercent.com, the resource base, and search for the word PLG in the search bar, there's a whole article on PLG versus SLG and like how it changes your advertising tactics. But that's the short answer.
Yeah, sounds good. And I know for the examples you were mentioning, all the different incentives. Do you find that when people have ads with, $100, like, promoting an $100 gift card for, signing up for a demo, do you find that they tend to get like very spammy leads or bots or any like kind of issues like that?
Yeah, so it depends how you run your campaign. Generally, you want to be a little tighter with targeting, a little more careful with who those ads go out to. But in general, you'll see about a 15% increase in the percentage of leads that are like they just want the gift card and they want to bounce.
Yep.
But you get like a 40 to 50% increase in the actual rate of like lead to demo show up. So
Okay.
in the end, the math works out, even though you get some more spammy leads.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. I see Leah in the chat mentioned with an ABM high ticket services business. Are you also thinking of whitelisted thought leadership content via strategic partners with greater reach as a
Yeah.
useful tactic?
Yeah, you almost can't have too many offers inside your ABM campaigns. Like these audiences are so small, 10, 20,000, 50,000, 5,000, that they exhaust in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And definitely we've seen, if you can get a well-known influencer who has more credibility than you to talk about why you're good. Same thing with like news articles. Like if there's an article in Fortune that says why your company is good, like often you'll get even better results just promoting directly to that offer or influencers. So that can definitely be a good part of ABM strategies.
Yeah, sure. All right. Alex asked, my product is extremely niche and in an M&A heavy vertical. We haven't had much luck with social. We've had luck with PPC though. Do you have any recommendations for direct response channels or tactics?
So it's very niche. How niche? What like how many target decision makers and what industry is it?
Yeah, Alex, you can put that in the Q&A or you can put it in the chat as well. He
Yeah,
said less than 5,000.
less than 5,000. So honestly, when you have less than 5,000 people, it's hard to make ads work. It's generally going to be like, so the fewer the number of decision makers, the more that your process is going to be sales led versus marketing led, right? So realistically, you want to take your lists of whatever you can go after with cold like sales outreach, use an ABM approach where you can get content in front of these people, not broad prospecting, like not a big audience on LinkedIn where you're expecting like hundreds of leads, but just stuff to get in front of this list. And you can also do that lift test split that I mentioned earlier. I also see someone else asked a question on those lift tests, like how when you track sales interactions, can you extrapolate on that? Yes. So it really depends on your platform, right? But for many platforms, you can see variables such as like responded to sales email, converted from lead to opportunity. Each company has their own different setup of what that data looks like, but there's almost always something you can find which indicates that one side is better than the other. And you want to determine that before you start the test so you know how many numbers you want.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. I know we have a minute to go, so we are going to wrap up the Q&A. However, if you have any follow-up questions for Kevin, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll send them off to him after this webinar is over. And before we wrap it up, I just wanted to launch a quick poll just to get your feedback. Like I said before, this is the first Spark Sessions webinar that we've hosted, and we want to obviously host more of these. So please share your feedback on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the best, how you would rate this session. And with that, I also just wanted to quickly mention too, if anyone is in the Austin area or is traveling to South by South next week, a handful of our team will be there, and we actually have a session on podcast advertising on that Friday afternoon. So we'll post more details about that in our follow-up email, but definitely stop by, say hello if you are traveling to South by Southwest. Great, let me end this poll. All right. Thank you, everyone, again. And of course, thank you, Kevin, for sharing all that great insights. I know 30 minutes is challenging to cover everything, but you did a great job. And thanks to each of you again for participating and attending today's webinar. We are looking forward to sharing our recording after this webinar is over. And yeah, sounds great. Kevin, any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just thank you everyone for attending. Good luck on working with your sales team, and yeah, have a great 2025.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.